Hi guys, Luke and Sarge here, and welcome back to another episode of the Young Professionals Podcast. Luke, who do we have on the show today?
Sarge, terrific question and very excited for this one. We have Matthew Kalatzis, who is a podiatrist operating his own private clinic in Melbourne. After studying a Bachelor of Health Science at LaTrobe University, Matthew completed his Masters of Podiatry, focusing on shin splints in runners, which is what he wrote his master's thesis on. After graduating, Matt began his podiatry career up in the sunny Gold Coast, working there for 2 years after moving from Melbourne. Matt soon started his own podiatry business, predominantly servicing local nursing homes in and around the Gold Coast. Matt soon sold this business and then returned to the homeland of Melbourne, where he opened his current business, Comfort Feet. Matt is no stranger to recognition in the field, recently being awarded runner-up Young Businessman of the Year in his local council. Now an established podiatrist and business owner, Matt is looking to return to LaTrobe University to impart some of his wisdom on young podiatry students, and we hope that some of that wisdom can be borrowed today in this chat. Matt, thanks for coming on, mate. Welcome to the show.
You're more than welcome, gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be here. Can't wait to impart some knowledge.
Looking forward to it. I think that's a good place to start, mate. Why don't you, in terms of the wisdom, why don't we explore exactly what a podiatrist does for those of us that don't have that kind of intimate knowledge of the field. You can take it each and every way that you would like, but why don't you kind of run us through what a day-to-day in the life looks like?
Okay. So literally day-to-day as a podiatrist, you're liaising with the patient, you're liaising with doctors, you're liaising with orthopedic surgeons, vascular surgeons, basically determining the best way to go forward and structuring a treatment plan which allows the patient to get back to pre-injury levels of exercise, quality of life. That is the sort of basis of my profession. Then you have the general side of podiatry, which means that you liaise with doctors only, and they come in, they may do some nail cutting, diabetic assessments, wound care, that type of stuff. And that's very much structured on palliative care. So you keep the patient at a point where they can do what they need to do daily, walking, ambulating, without any issues and without any risk. But as a sports podiatrist mainly, and that's what I've structured my clinic around, pretty much it's determining the issue through imaging, x-rays, all those things. So in-depth tests, and structuring a rehab program, utilising my continual professional development, that's dry needling, cupping, all that stuff, and then getting it back to running, jumping, hopping, skipping, that type of stuff. Yeah.
That's a good recap, and we can happily plug Comfort Feet if anyone needs some podiatry service down in Mitcham. That's Matt's business at the moment. But Matt, I think it's a good point to pick on there is that you've started to focus on or decided to focus on sports podiatry. But I think for the common person out there, my only interaction with the podiatrist was to go and get fitted for orthotics. It's cool that the profession is so broad and you've been able to focus on the sports side of things. What led you into that? And if someone else is, say, thinking about getting into podiatry, what are the other areas that they might be able to specialize in outside of, say, just sport? Okay.
So personally, I got into podiatry because I had severe knee injuries throughout, I reckon, year 7, 8, 9 from playing basketball. Went to a physio, went to an osteo, chiro, they couldn't help. And then eventually, through someone's word of mouth or a connection of ours, podiatrist, went to a podiatrist, got fitted with orthotics, never had knee pain again. So from that experience, that's really opened up a world to me. I was like, okay, he's helped me change my path in terms of my athletic career or whatever it was. And I was able to say, all right, this is a pathway I want to explore. So that was from my experience. I've heard from others it was a gateway maybe into another course. So they started off wanting to be a physiotherapist and they thought, okay, I didn't get the enter score for that. So I'll go into podiatry first and then transfer over second year. And that's pretty much how I started. Pretty much started that way, yeah.
So it's interesting that you started from an experience of your own.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's good. I think it's great because I think we've spoken to a few people and their stories have resonated with you in the sense that they they came across a profession by virtue of them actually seeing that person and having a positive experience with them. Just one question to go back a little bit. You haven't actually once mentioned feet. Is podiatry just about feet, or is there a little bit more to it than that?
So as a sports podiatrist, and anyone that comes through my clinic, I'll tell them that it's not just foot related. It's ankles, knees, hips, so from the pelvis down. And that's what I've really structured my clinic off. So sports related injuries. So anyone that comes in, it could be knee issues, could be hamstring tears, it could be foot posture related issues, it could be shin splints, plantar fasciitis, whatever it is. It doesn't just have to be something or an injury restricted to the foot area. We can treat other areas as well. That was actually something that, going through university, the facilitators and the teachers always said that was the hardest type of clinic to build. So if you could build a sports specific clinic, you've really made it as a podiatrist. It's taken me 3 years, and I would say my percentage caseload would be 90% sports and 10% general. But that gives you a really good variety throughout the day. If I was doing 100% sports, I'd probably go crazy. If I was doing 100% nail cutting, which I have done in the Gold Coast, you go crazy doing that as well. So you need a good balance, just like any profession. So, yeah,
with
it's
that,
not just the feet.
Not just the feet.
Not just the feet.
With that, Matt, I think it's a good point to touch on. In our kind of, I guess, research for the chat, you were talking about the different, I guess, perspectives that different podiatrists take. And there was a phrase there that you said that, some people won't touch anything above the ankle, or, you won't go past the shin or up to the knee. Is that a risk, or is that just your increasing your understanding of how, say, that complete limb works, and then using that extended knowledge to understand different injuries rather, and help people more generally as well?
I don't think there is a risk associated, to be honest. I mean, I've got my master's. I continually do my continual professional development. So that's 20 hours a year for us podiatrists. So I'm up to date, latest treatments, what to do, what not to do. So if I ever feel like that I am sort of exploring treatment pathways outside of my scope of practice, I'll always refer off. I'm not one of those podiatrists that'll just go, come to me and keep coming back and back and back. I think patient-centered care and honesty is super important in my profession. So that's what I've instilled in my staff members, all 6 of them, and the clinic's going great guns. So that's the way we want to keep it. But I think if you can continually broaden your scope of practice and provide patients with quality care, then there's no issues with just exploring other parts of the body. We wouldn't do anything above the hips. No. I always draw that line to my staff members as well. Nothing above the hips.
It's good everyone's on the same page at Comfort Fit Mitcham.
Yes, that's exactly right.
And when you're treating your sports patients, are they professional athletes? Are they people playing at the local footy club who might roll their ankle? What types of patients are actually coming through in that sports space?
So I'll be seeing the weekend warriors. So the patients that, especially during lockdown now, they'll basically be getting into their running schedules for the first time, and overuse occurs straight away. So they don't know about shoes. They don't know about training errors in terms of surfaces and 10% rule, progressively overloading. So they just go gun-ho to start off with. So the weekend warriors, and then I see the professional athletes. So I've treated some women's NBL players. I've treated Matildas players. I've treated some AFL players. That has only come through, definitely broadening my scope of practice and keeping up my continued professional development, sure, because otherwise they'd see right through you. So then there's a fair few types of individuals that I'll see in the sports sort of arena.
On that, mate, I think broadening your, professional development, like you were talking about, is one, getting better as a podiatrist, but it's clearly a business opportunity for you to bring in more clients to your clinic. What was the experience like, getting up to, say, the Gold Coast and starting your own business, and you're like, I've gone through uni and now I've got this clinical skill, or I don't know if that's the right phrasing, but you've got this skill and now you've got to go out and figure out how to run a business as well? Like, is that something that you knew that was going to happen, or was it a shock to the system? How did that pan out for you?
So pretty much when I got up to the Gold Coast and I was heavily involved in the business after about a year, I saw exactly what my boss was doing, and she was wearing many hats. So she was the accountant, she was the lawyer, she was the marketer. She was doing absolutely everything. And I was like, I love this. I want to be in that position one day. So when I was in that position one day and I realized, oh, my clinical prowess is not enough, the marketing side of things, that had to be a steep learning curve, because if you don't put yourself out there, they don't know about you. So I did a marketing course. I started following people on social media because that's such a valuable asset in businesses now. So I just followed those healthcare professionals with a large, following base, and I sort of emulated their tactics into my business. So that has really, really helped. But it was a steep learning curve, definitely. And there's a couple of restless nights there, I could tell you that much, in the first year. But you just got to keep pushing forward and celebrate the little wins, and then it all just rolls from there. Yeah.
And what piqued your interest, Matt, in actually being a business owner rather than just being a podiatrist?
It was the breadth of knowledge, pretty much. So I wanted to expand my knowledge base. I've always been someone that has surrounded myself with like-minded people, and then some of my mates, they're starting their own businesses, they're entrepreneurs, and I thought, all right, not only is it the monetary rewards, it's also they get a real sense of self and self-empowerment, and I love that. So I thought, okay, I want to do that too. That just goes, yeah. Go on,
I think that self-empowerment point really resonates with Luke and I. And on that point, so what got you into podiatry in the first place?
So it would have been, one, the injury that I had, but two, I wanted to help people. I think it comes down to just really giving back for me in a sort of productive way. And obviously I had the whole structure, whether it was from friends, family, whatever it was, that going straight after school to university, you get your degree. But I didn't want it just to be about making money. I wanted to give back. And I thought I could do that best with my personality and whatnot through healthcare. So, yeah, so had the injury, thought, okay, he's given to me what I want to give to others, sort of structured all my subjects and whatnot for year 10, 11, 12 to get into the health side of things, and then got the enter score, got into podiatry, got offered physiotherapy, but I asked faculty heads, what's job availability like, ability to travel with it, salaries, and sports podiatry always came out on top. So that was really attractive to me. So just went from there.
With that, Matt, I think that focused drive and the focused attention on being a podiatrist from such a young age is quite a rare thing. And I'm not just talking being focused on being a podiatrist, but having a focus on being anything from that young is quite rare, and you don't really see that a lot, and that could be a good or a bad thing. Where did that come from, do you think? Is that, and I'm talking about more of the ability to focus on one goal, has that always been something that you've done through sport or school or anything like that, or has it kind of come about when you had this thing that you were super passionate about and then it kind of developed from there?
I think it's a combination of both. So with my large sporting background, it was always, all right, you need to practice. So you've got a singular goal in mind. It was that game on Saturday or the game, Friday night, whatever it was. And so you'd practice for that and you put your blinkers on. So you just want to beat the person next to you. Not that it's about comparisons and whatnot, but yeah, it's definitely a lot of the way that I approach my business has come from the way that I used to approach my sport, for sure. Absolutely. I'm sure you would have found that as well, starting up with this whole podcast and whatnot. You've seen other people do something similar and you're like, okay, I know I've got the drive. Why not?
Oh, definitely. There's there's no point in reinventing the wheel. Like people have obviously thought a lot about things and made certain decisions for certain reasons. So it's like, oh, okay, well, you got to kind of back them and say, well, they've clearly thought about this. So what can I learn from that?
Exactly. So, yeah, so I thought, all right, I'll give podiatry a real red hot crack. I get my little travel in there, and then I started a business when I came home, and I thought, okay, we'll give this 3 years. It's a 3-year mark now, and it's been blinkers on and more than rewarding. So, yeah, happy I did it, really.
Oh,
Yeah.
it sounds like you made a fantastic decision.
Yeah.
And in terms of actually studying podiatry
Yes.
and looking at the feet at university,
Yes.
what is that like?
Oh. What is that like? It was because the first 2 years, it was mainly health science backing. So what that means is I was with physiotherapists, OTs, just health science students. So we got a real broad understanding. So that really allowed me to understand vascular structures, the nervous system, all those type of things, which was a good base. And then you went into the foot. And that's when you start to deal with the cadavers and going out to placements, super, super interesting stuff. And I mean, you wouldn't get to do that in other professions, so it was, very, very eye-opening. And that maintained my interest, which was super important to me because personally, if I'm not, in a way, stimulated, if it doesn't engage me, then I will just go on to the next thing. Yeah, but podiatry has definitely stimulated me. And that's through my own interests as well. So continuing the studies, because if you don't, then it can be very, very easy to just lose track. So you just got to keep studying.
I'd imagine also in an industry where it's a skill that is based off, say, research and understanding of the human body, which is always changing. Like you're always going to need to be upskilling when people discover new things or better ways of doing things that already exist. So I think that's what makes health sciences such a, interesting area for me. And on that, can we go into a bit more detail on, say, the undergrad side of things? If someone's interested in going into health sciences generally, and I understand that LaTrobe has quite a good program, which is where you went.
Yes.
You touched on it briefly. So you go into a Bachelor of Health Sciences, and then you're doing a general degree, and then you can kind of say, okay, I want to go and do osteo, I want to go do podiatry or what have you.
So the way that LaTrobe had it set up when I was there, so from 2011 to 14, it was you go do 2 years general health sciences, but you had already really enrolled in what you were doing after that 2 years. So my course was Bachelor of Health Science, Masters in Podiatry. So after the 2 years, I would do 3 years or 2 years, of podiatry based. The other courses would have been Bachelor of Health Science, Masters in Physiotherapy. So you would choose before you go, but I knew a lot of kids had no clue which pathway they wanted to take, OT, podiatry, physio, whatever it was. So they would just do the general health sciences and then transfer after second year, which I'm still very sure is the case today. Yep.
It sounds like a good way of going about it, because I can't speak from personal experience, but I would imagine that a lot of people have an interest in, say, the human body or working in that field, and then having that really broad undergraduate degree, albeit focused on the human body and figuring out how it works, generally speaking, and having those 2 years to figure out what niche little part of that you want to go into it sounds like a great opportunity from an outsider.
It's quite valuable, definitely. And then there was a lot of kids that would just not continually swap and change, but change once. And I kept in touch with them, and they were very happy that they went to do health sciences, LaTrobe, and they were given that 2 years to just determine what was their passion. And then they chose after that. Yeah.
So maybe fast forward a little bit. You finish your degree and you end up on the Gold Coast. Now you're a Melbourne boy. How did you end up on the Gold Coast?
There's a good story to that. So pretty much in fourth year, you had placement periods. I was the president of the Students Association. Blow my own horn a little bit there. But through that, I became quite close with the faculty head or the podiatry head, and her best friend had a clinic up in the Gold Coast. So I thought, I expressed my interest to live up there, and then one thing led to the other. The connection was made. Before I knew it, I did one of my fourth year placement blocks with her, and sun, sea, sand, it got me hooked. So I thought after placement, this is where I want to work. And sure enough, through that experience, through the placement experience, a job was offered to me, and I accepted. So I went up there, and it was for a year and a half to 2 years. I got all the base knowledge I needed, got all the experience, saw pretty much everything, which was great. and came back and then started my own thing pretty much.
Were you locked in for 1.5 to 2 years? Was that the arrangement?
Nah, there was no like sort of clause in the contract or anything like that. It was pretty much just until I got the experience. I didn't even know if I wanted to stay up there and live there for the rest of my life. I really actually miss when I was up there, the culture in Melbourne and some of the mates and, family members, which are all here. So that was a big factor in me returning. But it does dawn on me some days when you're waking up, it's like 9 degrees, 8 degrees like it has been the last couple of months. Geez, I want to get back up there. Up there. So I'll go up there and I'll do, because you run the clinic, you get the other staff members to do a couple of things, and then you can go up for a week or 2 weeks. Yeah.
Sounds like
that line? Yeah. I don't do it too often, but when I do, it's a really good reload, I would say, just a refresh.
Oh, definitely. That's super important, particularly these days when you can. Mate, exactly. I just want to drill into the placement side of the degree, because I think that is quite obviously an important aspect of getting qualified coming out with a degree. What does that look like? And obviously you ran us through how you got up there, but if someone is coming through the degree, I think something that's coming to the fore is that you're definitely not restricted from a geographical sense. Like once the borders and whatnot open, but like you can take that to any kind of regional area, even in Victoria or whatever state you're from, and you can certainly go interstate. Can you talk about those options and how they are publicised and how you can find out a bit more about them?
Yep. So that'll be literally done through either word of mouth. So if you're roaming the corridors in the podiatry faculty, one of the lecturers will say, I've got, this might be after a lecture, I've got an opportunity up in the Gold Coast, or I've got an opportunity in New South Wales, who would like to take it type thing. What I found was, I'm not too sure if LaTrobe's structured like this now, but you had a public sector placement, you had a private sector placement, and then you had a placement off and then a placement of choice. So if anyone listening out there wants to go down a particular pathway, that placement of choice block, which I made the decision to do, was to literally go to wherever you want in the country, wherever it is, where you want to work and impress. So that placement block of my choice, I said, going to the Gold Coast. And then that's how I got the job. So it's about keeping your ears out, listening, making some good connections just by being an alert student. That's fine, because then the staff members will come to you.
Do you want to go into a bit more detail about that in terms of how, obviously it comes naturally to you, you're quite an outgoing person, which is great for people that are like that. But say someone who's a little bit more introverted, what are some tips and tricks that they might be able to employ to, go and speak to their lecturer and get to hear about those opportunities a bit more, or go and talk to someone in industry? What can they kind of do to make that happen a bit more quickly than it would naturally?
Well, in health sciences, they'll always have a Q&A after a lecture. So you put your hand up, even if it's a stupid question, ask it. After lecture, go up to them and say, look, I had an interest in exploring this topic that you brought up a little bit more. Could we organise a time? Literally just by showing interest, doorway's open. That's just the way it is. In a way, you're sort of, not to get too philosophical, you're attracted by your actions. So if you are going out of your way to learn more and then that door opens, then another door will open after that if you just keep up that mindset type thing. So it's asking the questions, handing your work in on time, doing those little things, but it's just showing interest.
I think that's fantastic advice.
Yes. Yep.
When you spoke before about impressing once you get an opportunity, what are the types of things that a student can or should focus on when they're given an opportunity at an internship or a placement?
So it would be common conditions, treatment, symptoms, causes, treatment plans for that as well. It would be knowledge of anatomical structures. That's huge. So as someone who hires people, if someone comes in and does, during their probation period, they do some placement with me, and I get them to go hands-on with the patient and they don't know anatomical structures, it's not the best. someone who's a communicator. So they can clearly state to the patient, manage expectations through communication, what the treatment plan will look like, what they are to expect. Because with healthcare, it's all about managing expectations. Yeah. So if you can do those three things well, then you pretty much got it made. Yeah, I would say.
You make Definitely. It sound very easy, mate.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. After about 7-8 years of practicing, I do have high standards, but it comes easy for me. But then I also need to, reflect back and think, okay, to a new grad, it's not that easy because they're more worried about if I say this part wrong, then it doesn't align with what I've learned in the textbook, and then that is inherently wrong. But what I found out is if you're honest and open, and you obviously base everything you say upon what's in a textbook, but it's freer, open-minded in healthcare. You don't have to be the best student to do really well. You have to just be a good communicator and apply the knowledge that you do have.
I think that flows well into something that we hear or people hear about a lot when mates are going for interviews to get into, say, med school or anything to do in an industry that has that, bedside manner that people talk about a lot. That's clearly really important, and that's essentially what you're talking about there. For students, maybe even in back end of high school, say year 11 and year 12, wanting to get into some medical related field where that is important, or even students in uni, what are some, say, part-time jobs or volunteer experience or internships that would be good to, one, practice those skills so you can know that you're better at them, but then also are attractive to, say, prospective employers like yourself that you go, definitely. They've done X, Y, and Z. That means that they probably are good at those 2 or 3 things.
Yeah, so in the medical profession, ideally you want a candidate to have some type of practice or knowledge of how a medical practice runs. So that would be booking the treatment, review appointments, and fee schedules and all those things. That's the little stuff. You'd want the patient, well, this is my advice to people out there wanting to get into the healthcare profession, is to get a job which you can use the knowledge that you gain from that job in your professional life or in the next step. So for podiatrists, it's working at athlete's foot or active feet. You get that shoe knowledge, you see common conditions, you just talk to people and they tell you, oh, my podiatrist did this, or my physiotherapist did this, and it was a great approach. So with that knowledge and understanding, they can take it into their day-to-day treatment with patients a year later or whenever they're working professionally full-time. So you want them to have some know-how of how a clinic runs, a job in the medical profession, whether it's active feet, athlete's foot, or even something like strapping feet at a local football club, just something specific to podiatry. And then that stands out on a CV more than anything, really. Yeah.
And what's the thing that makes it stand out? Is it the fact that they've got the actual, skill, or is it the fact that they've gone, this is something I really want to do. I'm thinking laterally, how do I get that relevant experience? And then, they've gone and actually done that.
Thinking laterally, thinking outside of the box, definitely. Because, with just day-to-day work as a podiatrist, if your treatment plan that you learn at uni doesn't work, you've got to think outside of the box. So for someone to go and be proactive and say, look, I want to shine on this CV, I'm going to go and approach someone, show drive and ambition, approach someone to strap some feet, or approach someone and get a job in a clinic, or approach someone and get an active feet position. It really means that they'll transition into day-to-day life in a clinic, full-time work, much easier than the person who doesn't. Yep. I think that's just something that occurs throughout all professions.
Absolutely.
You want someone who's going to be ambitious. You want someone who's going to be a lateral thinker. You want someone who's going to apply themselves. And passion, exactly. Yeah, so if they're going out and exploring these extra opportunities, then they're passionate about what they do.
You've spoken a lot about thinking laterally and staying up to date with knowledge, etc.
Yep.
What types of resources are you using and courses are you doing to stay at the forefront of podiatry?
So the Australian Podiatry Association, they have a membership program where basically you get access to literature articles, you get access to speakers, you can go and do injection courses, dry needling courses. If you are a member of that community, then you can broaden your scope of practice very quickly and very easily. Other ways to do it is just to keep in contact with the people you graduated with. So I know in my life day to day, I have this message feed called the Arch Rivals, and it's literally called the Arch Rivals because all of my mates I graduated with, we work at different practices, and we just communicate about cases, how best to approach it. It could even be just about little things like, oh, what's the billing schedule for this? Because we're all sort of starting our own businesses, so keeping up to date with that is really, really good. And I would say you got to really invest in yourself with healthcare. So yes, it's all good to make money, but putting that money back into getting a course like dry needling, a course like cupping, scraping, injection therapies, that will help you to, yes, make more money, be a better practitioner. You have more variety or scope of practice day to day, so you're happier. So yeah, use the governing body resources, use your mates' resources. And yeah, that's really about it day to day, I would say.
You mentioned the Australian Podiatry Association.
Yes.
Is that something that a student can join, or do you have to have finished your degree to be a member?
You would have to be studying podiatry, but you don't have to finish your degree. So they'll give you a login and a username as a student of LaTrobe University or whatever uni you do it at in Australia. And then you can have access to all those bits and pieces free of charge. Yeah.
I think it's
really
important to note on those, the industry bodies, that is very similar in, I don't know every single industry if it is, but if not every single one, it would be the majority. So it doesn't really matter what course you're doing. If you're interested in getting into industry X, Y, Z, I think it's definitely worth the Google search to type in, industry body of marketing in Australia or law or whatever you're getting into. And particularly on that networking point, and something I wanted to ask you as well on that. If you don't know anyone in the industry and you're trying to get your foot in the door, showing how keen you are and just joining a body like that automatically opens you up to things like conferences and guest speaker events and stuff like that, where you can rock up and talk to people in the industry just because you're in the same room.
Well, another good valuable asset is the Bupa First Choice Clinic program. So you go onto Bupa, you type in your postcode, and you can literally just see the podiatrists which have been approved by Bupa, and they're usually quite good. And then you can send them an email, and you can also gain, a connection from that and a little bit of experience, so clarity about your next step if you are a student wanting to get into podiatry. So if you don't know anyone, seek the connection,
Definitely. And I think that goes for any industry, as Luke was saying before, in terms of industry bodies, that if you don't know anyone or you're not sure about it, just go and ask someone and do a little bit of due diligence to find out what it's actually about.
Yeah. And I know it can be a little bit daunting, especially coming straight out of, as a freshie, coming straight out of either high school or coming out of uni. But if you approach someone, they're not going to just shut you down. So that, for me, I've hired the last two people which have emailed me from whether they were first year uni, second year uni, because they, thought, okay, I want to make this connection. I don't know anyone, but I'm just going to send this guy an email. So that's an invaluable move, I would say. Yeah,
there you go. If you're studying podiatry and you're after some experience, send just Matt Kalatzis an email at Comfort Feet Mitcham.
You might get a position in the second clinic. You never know. Oh, that's great.
Mate, I think what you said there in terms of just put your foot out there. Sorry, put your foot, in the game and shoot some people.
Pun not intended.
It actually wasn't intended, but I'll go with it.
All right, I'm all for it.
But yeah, just shoot some emails out there, and you don't know what the response is going to be, but more than likely it's not going to be negative. And people have been through the process, and that's the kind of what we're trying to push with this podcast is interviewing younger people in the profession and realizing that, hey, they're only 5 or 6 years older than, where you are now. And it's a very recent memory for them knowing what it's like to come through uni. So people are more than happy to pay it forward.
100%.
I did want to go on to your point about, you've just hired a couple of people recently or relatively recently. I would imagine that that's quite a fulfilling experience to, have started your own business, and now you can, hire someone and pay them a salary and that can provide their livelihood. What other things have been, maybe one or two of the more fulfilling experiences that you've had since that, when you're in year 10, you got knees fixed and you're like, I'm going to do that as a career. What's been fulfilling since then?
So from a professional standpoint, I would say as someone who opened up this clinic, which is like 140, 150, 160 square meters, there's heaps of room to expand, and I had to do everything. So booking appointments, seeing the patient, charging the patient, accounting, everything like that, going from that starting point, like a Jeff Bezos in his room with just a poster in the background, and then going to a position with some grind where you've got 6, 7 staff members there with you. That's really rewarding. If you can do that, I have moments where I'm in the clinic and I may be in the back room and I can sit back and have another 10, 15 minutes extra lunch because I've got people, just working and they're happy to work. When I have moments like that, I'm just like, this is so good. This is so good. When I first opened up the clinic, had my first patient, I still remember the patient's name now. That was really rewarding. Getting accolades and stuff like that, yes, that's rewarding. I think that just comes with effort, but you don't start any type of business just pursuing the money or the accolades. Definitely, that's a surefire way to fail. So what was the question, Luke? I sort of got sidetracked there.
Oh, no, I think you're pretty much spot on. I was just more so what has been a couple of fulfilling experiences, but that in and of itself sounds quite rewarding. As you say, you can build this thing from the ground and then sit back and watch the seedlings grow a little bit.
And then also, a patient comes in to the clinic not being able to walk. So this is on a simple, very micro level, but when they leave that clinic, they feel a lot better about themselves because they know what's going on. They can walk. Okay, and you've changed their perspective on their life from that point onwards. So you can impact an immediate change, which is helping others, and that is super, super rewarding. And that's why I would just rock up to the clinic every single day, just so I can help someone,
That's super.
For me, that speaks volumes. Yeah, it is super. It is.
Oh, mate, it's good. It's good to hear how much of a difference you are making in the community.
Exactly. Oh, that's a really good point you make there, Sarge, as well. If anyone's out there starting a podiatry business or wanting to get into podiatry, getting out into the community, like joining local running clubs or joining the local Pilates group or BFit or whatever it is, actually opens up a lot of doors. So that's my little 101 for anyone wanting to start up a business in podiatry.
On that note, Matt, what advice do you have for students who might be thinking about studying podiatry at the end of the year or choosing to study podiatry at the end of this year?
What advice would I give them? I would say contact your local podiatrist. I would say go into a course where you have the capability to move. If it's health sciences, LaTrobe, great. If it's not, amazing. As long as you have the capability to move, make sure your passion is to help others. When, like all jobs, when you first start, it's not all rainbows and butterflies. So you will have to go through a bit of grind. But after that stage, it's really, really rewarding to help others, whether it's through treating sports patients or whether it's through general patients. My advice would be to also just go out there, follow a couple Instagrams of local businesses as well. Read some books like, if your entrepreneurial mindset, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, or 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey, something like that. If that really inspires you, then, just get into podiatry, get into that business structure, start up that business, whatever it is. But on a more simple level, just ensure that your passion is to help others. If you were a high school student going into university, for sure.
I think that's fantastic advice, Matt. I love your focus on passion and the fact that you say, reach out to people and actually go and do some wider reading about the area.
Yep.
Well, thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, you go on, Sarge. Go on.
Thanks for coming on the show today, mate. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you about podiatry and learning about what it is actually like to open a business and run a business and have some people helping you tell the community. So we really appreciate your time.
If anyone's got any questions out there, whoever listens to this, students, current podiatrists, anything like that, just shoot me an email at matt@comfortfeet.com.au if you have any questions, because I feel like I said a lot today. Maybe a little bit was rambling and whatnot, but if anyone wants any clarification or has any questions or queries, just shoot me an email and I'll help.
And also, if anyone has any foot issues in the southeast suburbs of Melbourne, just hit Matt up at Comfort Feet. he can help you out.
Mitchum. And then if you want to follow a good Instagram page, Mitchum Comfort Feet, give that a follow, or Comfort Feet Mitchum on Facebook. And you're in for some gems on those forums. Yes.
All right, mate.
All right, thanks a lot, guys. Appreciate it.
Appreciate the time. Thanks, mate.
Thank you.